All right, well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Sharon Norris, and I am the training coach from the Northern Bluegrass region. And our intent today is to share a menu of resources with you on early childhood trends, research, and practice that hopefully you'll find useful. We know that as credentialed trainers, we are responsible for staying on top of state and national early childhood issues, and particularly due to the pandemic, there has been a lot going on and a lot of changes. So our hope today is that you will leave this session with some resource ideas that help you to feel energized and refreshed, and potentially that you could use for new or updated training content. So let's move into our icebreaker. So for our icebreaker today, we are going to have what's called a chat waterfall. And let me explain to you how this works. If you are at a place where you can access your chat, go ahead and click on it. It's probably on your bottom control panel. And you're going to want to open up the chat so that you can see it. And the way the waterfall works is I will ask you a question and you will type the answer into the chat, but don't hit enter. And then when I give the signal, we'll all hit enter at once and we'll get to see a waterfall of responses. So let's give it a try. Our first question, what helps you to feel refreshed? So type that in the chat, but don't hit enter yet. What helps you feel refreshed? And welcome to those of you that are just coming in as well. Once people have had a chance to
remember, just type it, do not hit enter yet.
Yep. Right. All right. I think people have had a chance to type. So ready, set, hit enter. And let's see if we get a waterfall. Look at all these responses. Yep. Awesome. So I see nature, music. Ooh, a hot bath. I love that one. A good book, sleep. A nap. I like a nap too as well, and walking in the woods. All right, well, let's go on to our next question. Type in the chat, but don't hit enter yet. What is your favorite refreshing drink? Favorite refreshing drink. All right, ready, set, hit enter. Let's see what we get. Water, a lot of water. Green tea, cold water. Ooh, ocean spray diet pineapple, Kim. That sounds really good. Sounds really, really good. All right, our last question that you're going to type in the chat, but don't hit enter, is what is your favorite refreshing activity? So go ahead and type that, but don't hit enter till we give the signal. I think people have had a chance to type. So ready, set, hit enter. And let's look at our waterfall. Oh. Ooh, I see some really fun activities coming up. Kayaking, volunteering at the dog rescue. Rita, I love that one. Family chats, swimming. A couple people said swimming, I see. Art or yoga. These are some great answers. All right. Well, thank you. And that is our waterfall. And that is just a really simple icebreaker. It's a fun one anytime you've got a virtual meeting or if you're doing a live webinar training. So next, we're going to move on to a quick opening activity. And we're going to do a short Zoom poll on some early childhood trends. And I wanted to let you know, we set this poll up to be completely anonymous. So please feel free to be honest. We are not going to know how you have answered. So Bethany's going to put up our question. All right, this first question is about joy.
Just waiting on a few more people to respond.
Okay.
Okay, we got the majority responded, so
Okay. Well, we have an up-to-date group. Everybody said yes, and that is true. And we'll look at some resources a little later on that kind of explain why. Our next question, and this is I can explain this or I'm not sure. And this is a question about a change coming up in a screener.
okay. We got the majority answered, so
Gotcha. All right. So yeah, this the screener is the Ages and Stages, and for their 4th edition, they are removing the questions where preschool age children have to identify if they're a boy or a girl. And this is based on some updated learning about how some young children construct gender and their gender identity. So that is a change that's coming up. Our last poll question is on shared attention. Go ahead and take a look at that one.
okay, I'm gonna share the results of that one.
All right. So a little divided on that one, and we will share a resource later on that kind of explains how shared attention does support language development. So the answer to that is yes. So thank you for participating in our poll. And next, we're going to take a quick look at our agenda. Okay. So our goal today is really to share some highlights from each one of these resources. I do want to mention that links to everything we're showing are in the handout that was emailed to you yesterday. If for some reason you didn't get it, Bethany is also going to drop a link into our chat. At the end of our session, you'll notice there's a bullet point that says other resources. And so we are going to look at a few resources in addition. And we really went off the feedback that you gave us when you registered, when we were curating our resources. So we want to make sure we're giving you things that are addressing your concerns. Well, the first resource that we are going to discuss is from Camille Catlett at the University of North Carolina. And she offers 2 free monthly listserv newsletters where she curates vetted resources on research and practice on a variety of topics. And to join her listserv newsletters, you just email her at this email address, and that is in your handout. Her first newsletter, if we move to the next screen, this one is called Natural Resources, and this is really targeted towards children preschool age up to about age 8. And each month, Camille selects a topic and she vets resources around that topic. And so some recent topics have included trauma-informed care for children, universal design, assessment, and inclusion. And then her other newsletter is one called Baby Talk, and this one focuses on supporting those who serve infants and toddlers, and she curates a variety of resources. So next, we're going to look at a sample of some of the resources that you might see in her newsletters. So on this screen, this is a Universal Design STEM Adaptations guide. This link is in your handout. But this is a 10-page guide with adaptations for environment, materials, and instructions that support children of all ability levels in accessing STEM materials. And there's just some really simple and clear adaptations. And as an example, one that I loved is an adaptation called a page fluffer. And that is just a simple modification that you can make to a book. to make it easier for a child with fine motor delays to turn the pages. I see some people nodding. Right. And Camille's newsletters also frequently include videos to support various topics. And we are going to watch and briefly discuss this thought-provoking video that she shared on toys and gender. And this is about a 3-minute video.
Look at this. Look at this. Do you like a dolly? Should we go for the dolly? There's a good girl. You're a good little girl, aren't you, Sophie? Look, what does this say? Sweet dreams. Sweet dreams. Ooh, look at this, Sophie. Meow, meow. I think she liked that pink dolly the best.
If I were to tell you actually that Sophie is Edward,
Does
that change anything?
I maybe thought, oh, this is a little girl, so I have to give her little girl things.
Solo. Solo. Hello. Hello. Come on.
What's this one? What's that one do? Is that a robot? What about this? You like that one? What does this one do? Oliver. Oliver.
You've gone for, you could say, boy toys for this boy.
Possibly in my subconscious, but for me, I was just going for what was around me, but then perhaps my subconscious was automatically playing a trick on me that I was...
If I tell you that he is actually a girl.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. I suppose it's because of the stereotype.
And then that changed your behaviour towards the child.
It did.
And your behaviour was quite directive.
1, 2, 3. Beep,
Ah.
beep, beep, beep. Beep, beep. Do you want to see my robot?
She's picked up the robot, the car, the puzzle game. And I think she's been much more physical in handling the child than the other adults have been with girls.
That really astounded me because I thought that I was somebody that had a really open mind.
The surprise, so I automatically went for the pink fluffy toy because I said it was a girl, so I was sort of stereotyping.
I've always thought I was rather more open-minded than that, and I would think, you know, these are children's toys, whatever the gender.
It will make me think the next time I'm with a child, so my niece or my nephew, to make sure that I am actually being sort of fair and equal with all of them, and just giving each child an opportunity to just be whoever they are.
Well, thank you, Bethany. And moving on. So we just want to get your feedback. You can either chat or unmute. What surprised you about that video?
I was actually not surprised with the video. I think that we do so many things, definitely, you know, unintentionally, even when I did teach preschool, when I would get my class list and I would see that I had a lot of girls predominantly girls, I would catch myself almost automatically going to my dramatic play area and making it much bigger. Or if I saw a lot of boys on my class list, I would go to the block area and make it bigger, and not even realizing and then of course when I did the home visits, sometimes I would go back to my classroom and I would make changes. But when I did get my initial list, it did impact the way that I was setting up the environment, not really understanding that that would be a bias. But I just think that we, as a society, for so long have looked at boy things and girl things, and even parents. I even had a dad one time tell me that he did not want his child to play in the dramatic play area where the baby dolls were, and that he didn't ever want to come into the classroom and see his little boy playing with the baby doll. Now, he told me that specifically on the home visit.
So kind of some of those unconscious biases the video brought out. And I think some other people said, yeah, thank you, Rita. That's a great comment. Some other people said they're not surprised as well how prevalent these gender influences are. There were some great comments as well. Excellent point that none of the adults asked the child or kind of watched the child's cues to see what were they interested in. So excellent. Yeah, some really, really good feedback. Yeah, and the classroom centers too, to Rita's point. Yeah. How often do we think that, oh, if it's the girls are more likely to go to dramatic play? Absolutely. Well, this was great discussion. Thank you. And I'm glad I saw a comment from Christy that she liked the video and would want to share. So I'm glad that this one was useful for you. So we're going to move on to our next resource. And this is the Center for the Developing Child at Harvard University. And this group offers science-based resources on early childhood development, resilience, and stress. And the areas of childhood stress and resilience were of interest in our needs assessment survey that we did. And this is a group that a number of you are familiar with, I think, but they have a lot of excellent resources. So we wanted to share a few of them. So one thing that the Center for the Developing Child is known for is the concept of serve and return interactions in building a brain foundation for a child. And this is a simple 2-page handout. This link is also in your handout, but it's a simple 2-page handout that shows 5 steps that parents and caregivers can do to help support these kind of interactions. And this document gives a really clear explanation of how responding to the child's cues and that shared attention really supports their language and their cognitive development. So this might be something that you find helpful. And then they also have a video that explains this concept further. So we are going to watch this. I think it's about 1.5 minutes.
The key to forming strong brain architecture is what's known as serve and return interaction with adults. In this developmental game, new neural connections form in the brain as young children instinctively serve through babbling, facial expressions, and gestures. And adults return the serve, responding in a very directed, meaningful way. It starts very early in life, when a baby coos and the adult interacts and directs the baby's attention to a face or hand. This interaction forms the foundation of brain architecture upon which all future development will be built. It helps create neural connections between all the different areas of the brain, building the emotional and cognitive skills children need in life. For example, here's how it works for literacy and language skills. When the baby sees an object, the adult says its name. This makes connections in the baby's brain between particular sounds and their corresponding objects. Later, adults show young children that those objects and sounds can also be represented by marks on a page. With continued support from adults, children then learn how to decipher writing and eventually to write themselves. Each stage builds on what came before. Ensuring that children have adult caregivers who consistently engage in serve-and-return interaction, beginning in infancy, builds a foundation in the brain for all the learning, behavior, and health that follow.
Excellent. So that's the video on serve and return. The Center for the Developing Child has a number of other videos as well. And one on the next slide, they have a lot of resources on resilience and what science tells us about building resilience in children and families. So we're going to watch about 42 seconds of this video on how resilience is built.
Resilience is not some magical quality. It's something that really can be built, even in difficult circumstances.
The key active core ingredient to building resilience are the relationships kids have to others who care about them.
Of course, families play a very important role, but nobody raises children in isolation. We have a huge amount of research to show the powerful impacts of teachers, coaches, other adults in the community with whom children have a chance to develop relationships, who play that critical supportive role of building resilience. As a result of responsive interaction, children build simple skills of coping and adapting. How to stop crying, how to regulate your behavior, being able to defer gratification.
You have an adaptive toolkit that allows you at moments of stress or challenge to bring out a number of potential skills that allow you to get through it.
As children get older, the sophistication of those skills increases. Being able to monitor situations, solve problems. The way we as a society can nurture the development of resilience is to help communities to pay more attention to building the capabilities of the adults who care for children and provide the supports.
So that is gives you a flavor of the resilience information. And then there's one more resource we're going to share from this group. And here we go. So one of the really cool resources they have that goes along with resilience, they offer an activity guide for supporting children in developing executive function skills. And those are those skills like self-regulation and the ability to focus attention, the ability to remember directions and follow directions, the ability to set goals. But executive function has been shown by research to be a really important factor in young children developing resilience and in their learning. So they have a guide, and it's by the age of the child with simple steps that you can take to develop executive function skills. And it's funny because Rita's comments, they talk a lot about the value of dramatic play for preschool age children and what are things you can do in the dramatic play center to support their developing those important executive function skills. So this link is in your handout as well. Right. So let's take a minute to get your feedback. We're going to use the stamp function, the annotate function, or you can certainly unmute or type in the chat. But if you, would you use this information in a training, any of the Center for the Developing Child information? So if yes, I'm going to walk you through how you could stamp if you want with annotate. So if you go up to the top of your screen and there's something that says view options. And then if you click on that, you should see a choice that says annotate. And if you click on where it says annotate, then it'll open up like a bar of different options. And I think the fourth option in says stamp. And then if you hover on that, you'll see some shapes. And if you click on any one of the shapes, you can actually stamp it anywhere on the screen. And I see, so oh, I see lots of stamps, some hearts, some stars. And I see in the chat, somebody said yes. Okay, excellent. Yeah. And I love it. Somebody drew a heart. Yeah, there's all kinds of fun things you can do with the annotation function. So if you are doing any kind of Zoom-based virtual trainings, it's a really fun thing to know about. So wonderful. Thank you. Well, thank you for your feedback. And I think, Bethany, I'm going to clear the drawings, and then wonderful. And then we will move on to our next resource. Okay. Go ahead and hit clear for everything. All right. So the next resource we're going to briefly take a look at is a group called Anti-Bias Leaders in ECE. And this group was formed to really help kind of explain and support anti-bias education practices. And this area for Child Care Aware as an agency, this is an area that we have gotten a lot of questions on, both from providers, but also from trainers. It's also an area that there's been a lot of changes in the last 10 years, a lot of updates. But one of the founders of this group is somebody named Louise Derman Sparks, and she's pretty well known as the co-author of the book Anti-Bias Education for Young Children and Ourselves. So a lot of great resources on this site. One of the free resources that they offer that came out in 2020 is a free 45-minute short film of classroom vignettes demonstrating anti-bias practices along with teacher reflections. And there is a free discussion guide as well as other resources with the film. And they also give some suggestions on how you can break it down into smaller chunks so you don't have to watch the whole thing at once. But just to give you a flavor of the type of information that you might see, Bethany's gonna, I think she has to take us actually to a different screen, but we're gonna watch just a minute and a half, couple minutes on this.
Did you see Julie's new puppy? Juniper? She got a new puppy. And it's beautiful. It's super black, like your shirt, and fluffy. And it's a cute little, oh my gosh, it's a cute little face. She was in the hallway this morning with Julie. Maybe we can take a walk over there later and see her. She's in Julie's office with baby Luna. And now there's two babies over there, a puppy and a real baby. I know. You just have to step back and look at your own biases. You do have to check yourself because there's some things that, wow, this is just not how I was raised. Oh, Zara is so beautiful and brown. Just like me and you. Me and Zara, made by Zara. I just love it. But I would say coming into this kind of work, yeah, there is some soul searching, like look at yourself and look who you are. Look at who you are.
It's a lot about who you are, how you feel as a human, your emotions, the empathy towards others and yourself too. It's all down to that. It's down to what kind of human do you want to be.
All right. So that is just a snippet of that video. And I saw from a question in the comment, it sounds like, is this one that some of you are already familiar with or have already used? All right. Anybody have any quick comments on that? Liz says she has used it. Yeah. Okay. Oh, a number of you have. All right.
You can actually contract with John Nemo, who is the director of that film, and we had him do a debrief, and it was pretty amazing to hear how that video was developed and what their thinking was surrounding that. So, and I think you can also buy it on exchange for $12 for that reflection. So did you say that that was a free resource?
The video itself is free to watch. So if you as a trainer want to watch it, and then there is the free discussion guide and a number of other free resources on their website as well. But yeah, I think you're right. There may be a cost to actually purchase the DVD of the film. But, well, excellent. All right. Well, thank you. Well, we're going to move on to our next reputable resource, and this is an organization. This is probably the one that many folks are most familiar with, National Association for the Education of Young Children. I tend to refer to them as NACY, but this group provides global evidence-based position statements, as well as practice recommendations and updates on early childhood issues. So they have a lot of resources available. We're going to highlight a couple that have changed fairly recently. So moving on to the next slide, as I mentioned, they have a lot of resources. So they do have a free resource option. There is a membership option that gives you access to even more resources. But there's a lot of great stuff on there that's free. I know some folks had mentioned challenging behavior as an area of interest. If, for example, if you go on their website, they have a whole topic on guidance and challenging behavior with all kinds of free resources. But two position statements that have fairly recently been updated that we just wanted to briefly highlight. One is their position statement on developmentally appropriate practices, and that was revised in 2020. And it was the first time in 11 years that it had been updated. So it was a pretty significant update. And then we're also going to take a quick look at their position statement on advancing equity. And this is a new one that they issued in late 2019, right before the pandemic. So take a minute. This is from the updated developmentally appropriate practice position statement. So take a minute to read this quote. And this relates to our poll question on joyful learning, but everybody got that right. So that's excellent. Well, the updated the updated position statement, if we move on to the next slide, it has 6 guidelines. And the words that are in italics show the updates from the prior edition. So just very quickly kind of looking through. So for item 1 on community of learners, there's an added focus on an equitable community of learners. For family relationships, there's a real focus on reciprocal back and forth relationships, learning from each other. For assessment on item 3, I love this change. It specifically a focus on observing and documenting for each child using those, authentic assessment methods. And then coming down to item 5 on curriculum, there's an added focus, that word engaging. And that really ties to the quote you read about joyful learning and learning with a sense of wonder. And then this edition of the developmentally appropriate practice statement added a new guideline, number 6, on demonstrating professionalism as well. So reading through this statement, there are a few other changes that are kind of interwoven throughout that we'll quickly look at on the next slide. There we go. So one of the changes, again, going along with that joyful learning, there is a real focus on this one that developmentally appropriate practice really is looking at each child as an individual, recognizing their strengths, and then providing them learning opportunities that build on the strengths. There's also an increased understanding of the importance of looking at context as part of developmentally appropriate practice, not just the child's context, but also the teacher and the program, and how does that program context impact what the child is getting. And then a final really interesting change that is part of this position statement is NACY has consciously decided to move away from the term best practices. And that is due to a growing understanding of the limitations of research studies in terms of what audiences they're looking at. And they're sometimes only looking at certain groups of children. And so a term that you may see start to be used instead of best practices is quality practices. And that's a little more of a broad, little more of an inclusive term. So those are some updates from developmentally appropriate practice. Oh, all right, so now we're going to quickly take a look at the new position statement that came out for the first time in 2019, and that is the statement on advancing equity. So on the left, you'll see kind of what NACCE considers that each child has the right, which is equitable learning activities. And the corollary to that that's in this position statement is that each one of us as early childhood professionals have the obligation to work to advance equity. So this position statement really grew out of a recognition of the patterns of inequality, both interpersonally and systemically and structurally, and how that impacted children and families. There's also a growing body of research on the impact of unconscious bias, specifically in early childhood. We already kind of talked about that a little bit with the toy video. And this position statement gives a lot of suggestions and recommendations on what each person can do. It's really built on starting with self-reflection for each one of us so that we are growing in awareness of our own background and culture, values and beliefs. And hopefully that can lead each one of us to have a better understanding of our own biases that we're bringing. So links to both of these position statements are in your handout, but if you haven't had a chance to look at them, I would highly suggest taking a minute to read through them. Okay, so with NACCE, let's get some feedback. If you want to put in the chat or unmute, what is one thing that jumped out at you? Anything that struck you about those position statements or other resources? So the best practice, yeah, the diversity, equity, and inclusion is really much, much more prominent. Absolutely. Okay. All right. Yeah, the best practice change was definitely, because that was a term that they really used so much. So very interesting. Well, excellent. Well, thank you. Great feedback coming in the chat. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for your feedback. So we're going to move on in the interest of time. And we're going to look at a few other resources a little more quickly.
Sharon?
Yes.
Sorry. Carla asked, what did you say best practice is being replaced with?
So there's no one term, but one that you may see being used is quality practices. And I know that is a change Child Care Aware of Kentucky has made, because some of our coaches used to talk about providing technical assistance to best practice, and now we'll say we're supporting quality practices. Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to briefly look at a few other resources. And again, this was just based on your feedback from the registration. I do want to mention the last item on this list, National Institute for Early Education Research. That is out of Rutgers University, and that link is in your handout. So there's a lot of research information there. And then we're going to look at these other four very quickly. So one of the things that many people said they were interested in was some options for video clips, kind of to learn more. So these are two different options. the Center for Early Childhood Excellence at Eastern Connecticut State, they have a library of over 125 early childhood videos that are based on research and that really demonstrate classroom practices. So definitely check them out. I know they added one in 2021 on supporting young children in developing empathy. They fairly recently added a series of videos on developing math skills in the classroom. So there's a lot of good information there. Then another option is the Results Matter video library, and this is out of the Colorado Department of Education. And they have a lot of resources, video resources focused on assessment and authentic assessment methods. So several trainers had asked specifically for family childcare resources. So this screen and your handout just lists a number of specific resources, kind of depending on what your needs are. So some are focused more on business information and advocacy. But one thing I do want to point out, if you go to many of the large national resources like NACI or Caring for Our Children and specifically search on family childcare, there are a number of specific resources that are available depending on your needs. So this just lists some of them. And then over by the bird at the bottom right, I did want to highlight the Family Childcare Network of Kentucky. This is something that is being started by the Division of Childcare and the intent is to really support and build family childcare centers and the number of family childcare programs in Kentucky. So their website there's some information there. And I know the network is also developing a website. And so that's another potential resource for you. So next, a resource that many people are familiar with is 0 to 3. And this group provides lots of information to support infants and toddlers development. And similar to NACI, they have a paid option, but they also have a lot of really excellent free resources. So this link is an example of a science-based resource showing what are the milestones for infants and toddlers in developing empathy, and then what are some steps that can be taken to assist with that. And then our last resource that we are going to look at, and some of you had mentioned you use this. This is the Early Childhood Knowledge and Learning Center from the Office of Head Start. And they have a lot of resources on quality practices that are appropriate for all children. And they have topics such as curriculum and assessment and challenging behavior, family engagement. So just a lot of excellent information. And one of their newer resources that they have added, and this link takes you to it, it is a 2-page handout on talking with young children about similarities and differences. So it's how to, what research says about how young children notice differences, and then how to talk with them to support their learning and also kind of help them avoid forming biases and stereotypes. So yeah, I see lots of great, yeah, they have PowerPoints and articles, so a lot of good information. So we're just going to take, because we've got about 6-7 minutes left, and we are going to close with a fun little short 1-minute video. So we're just going to take maybe 30 seconds to a minute per group. So to just kind of report out. So let's go ahead and start with breakout group number 1. What was discussed?
How do we know what group we were in? I think we were breakout group number 1. Is that right, April?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Linda, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what some of our thoughts were and comments were. Somebody said they really loved the video clip resource and that they want to spend more time on the updated position statement from NACI. Somebody else said that they really liked the list serve and that really sparked some thoughts, and really everything really was amazing. That was another comment, and I think we all agreed with that. And so then the other thing was somebody mentioned the Early Childhood Learning Center, And somebody else mentioned the unconscious bias little video that we watched. That was an eye opener. And then also learning that, best practice really should probably be referred to as quality practice now instead of best practice. So those were basically the things that we discussed.
Awesome. Thank you, Linda. Okay, how about room number 2? Is there anybody from room number 2 that can report out?
I was in room 2. I'll see if I can give just a quick synopsis of what we talked about. There was a lot of conversation going on. Lots of talk about the anti-bias, and how to use, I discussed, I definitely will use that as a resource in, that's something we talk about anyway in our foundation course. It's our, the IECE professional. So, that is definitely something I'll use. There was some discussion about that one. And then some other discussion about free resources. So, and I think it is just that sharing of ideas. That's one of the reasons why I thought this whole training would be, very useful. And, each other is the best resource we have. I talk to my students about that a lot when we're in class. We're the best resource we have. If you have an idea, and I always tell them, I'm here as your instructor, but I also want to learn from you. What are you using in the classroom right now? So I really enjoyed hearing everyone else discuss some resources they've used.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, it is great to learn from each other. All right, room 3, and that is Etta, Jennifer, Julie, Molly, and Tina. Any comments from room 3? All right, how about room 4? Bambi, Cynthia, Kim?
Yeah, that's me. I got to be the reporter. So it was pretty much a consensus that they really liked the video resources. They thought they were really helpful, and that because they could be used either face-to-face or on an online session as well, not only just to show what's appropriate, but also maybe what shows what's inappropriate in a classroom as well. One of our participants already has signed up for the newsletter for Camille. So she did that yesterday when she actually got the handout. So I thought that was really neat. And then actually somebody said that they just really thought that the whole session today was very helpful. And it was nice to have some new updated resources to choose from. So that was us.
Well, thank you. Yes. And I was in room 5, and we had some great discussion, and same thing. Some of the themes that we've already talked about, learning from each other, and that there have been some good resources. There was a lot of interest in our group in the anti-bias curriculum and kind of taking some of that information and sharing it with trainings. We also had some folks who were interested in the family childcare resources and some of the trainings or some of the opportunities from that. And we also talked about, some of the social emotional resources and anti-bias resources, particularly in some areas there's a need. There's a lot of grandparents who are parents right now. So that's a potential training area, and some of these resources relate to that. So we had lots of good conversation, but thank you, everyone. I'm glad that the breakout rooms had some good conversation, and thank you for reporting out. So we have about a minute. So for our closing, we are going to watch one last video, and this is what Camille Catlett calls, she offers gumdrop videos in each one of her newsletters, and they are short little videos that illustrate key concepts. So this is a 1-minute video, and it shows how an adaptation helps a little boy blow out his birthday candle.
Now you can blow it out.
Try again. Blow up here. You're terrible at this. You're gonna light your head on fire. Blow it up here. Whoa, dude. Oh my goodness. Right here, right there. Blow. What are you? You're gonna open your mouth and blow. Do it. Hold on.
Slow down, Daddy. Slow down.
Slow down.
There.
Stop.
Here. Ready? Blow. There you go. Yay!
All right. So that is our closing gumdrop.
Good job, buddy.
So thank you, everyone. Before we leave, we do want to mention, save the date. Next month, our trainer connection is on March 15th, and it is on fast, fun, and functional QR codes. So put that on your calendar, 2 o'clock, and we hope to see you there. And thank you again, everyone. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or get in touch with us, but we really appreciate your participation and your feedback. So have a great afternoon.